So we're here with Suvianna. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to the work you're doing now?
Yeah, of course. So I'm the founder of AI for Change Foundation, which is a nonprofit focused on making AI more ethical. And I didn't come from tech background. I actually studied law. And I was being really interested about human rights. And over time, I saw how much impact AI is starting to have our daily lives. And I saw how disconnected is often from real world values. So I started this foundation at the beginning of this year to close this gap and help build AI that is actually supports people. And so we are trying to build awareness through workshops and toolkits. And also we have this yearly event called AI for Change Summit in Helsinki and online. And it basically gathers together policymakers and startups and so on to discuss about the future of AI, how we can use AI responsibly.
That's amazing. Honestly, I think that globally we're seeing such a push towards, the ethics, like making sure that there is, an ethical standard for AI. Like we have had another guest on who's also doing something not similar, but he's very interested in the frameworks behind it, the basis of ethics. Even myself, I've been doing a lot of research into how AI can really be used for good and how we need to have that basis for AI to work for humans.
Yeah, I'm curious because there's different ways of looking at it. And I think the guest you're talking about was sort of really thinking about another version of
Mhm.
ChatGPT with it underpinned. But I think from a legal standpoint, you're maybe thinking about it more from a governance framework. And I'm interested, do you think the legal background that you have has really helped you think about AI differently?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's also shapes my thinking and so on. I understand how it impacts the society, what limitation it has, and also importance of the legislation, of course. So I think it's helpful to also understand it and so on.
Thank you. And I guess when we're thinking about organizations, so I do a lot of work with organizations, particularly around equity and fairness. What do you think the biggest barriers for organizations are when they're trying to operationalize responsible AI? What are the barriers from this sort of legal and equitable standpoint, do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. And luckily, I started to see many organizations to understand that we should use AI responsibly. The real challenge is often how we turn these good values into real actions in daily life. And some organization might already have some policies or ethical principles written down, but it often comes to the real decisions like which AI tools to use or how to test them and how the teams are working together. And it's often a mess. So the biggest problems what I see is no one is really knows who is responsible for ethical AI, and these teams like tech or legal, they always don't work well together. So in my work, I try to connect these dots. I help the teams speak the same language, make ethical choices part of their daily lives, and give them tools like checklist and team support to make it more like practical and fit more to their daily lives.
One of the things, there was some research by Deloitte recently, and they said that in the UK particularly, because that's the data they had, a lot of individuals in the workplace are paying privately for AI tools. So I might get Copilot as a large language model in my work, but outside of, I might have paid for Gemini or ChatGPT and be using that in my work as well. So there's this wider problem that it's not just what you know, it's what you don't know your employees are engaging in, and they might be putting private work information, etc., into that. So it's kind of legislating for what you do know about and what you might not know about, isn't it, as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see this a lot in my daily work that often the problem is in the leadership, that these employees, they don't necessarily know what to use, what information they can feed to the AI tools and so on. So it's often a conflict. Some organizations are really like, you cannot use any AI tools, and some of them, you can use more freely and so on. So it's a quite mess in this sense. Yeah.
Just one more question on that, because I know that we've got to move on, but is there already checklists out there for leaders of organizations to just start thinking about this? Are there some frameworks already in existence that they can be pointed to?
We don't have from AI for Change Foundation yet, unfortunately, but for sure, you can find it online and so on. But I feel like we need better guidelines to this. Also, more importantly, I feel like the leadership, they should understand better how AI actually works. And based on that, they can make better decisions.
Thank you.
Definitely. I do think, a checklist would be great worldwide for all organizations to really be able to make sure that they are doing what they should be doing, especially when it comes to AI. I was also thinking about how the shape of these frameworks takes place, as I guess, when you're building it, when you're making these frameworks, when you're making these checklists, how do you ensure that equity, especially across gender, race, and geography, it's not just an afterthought, but, a foundational design principle?
Yeah, for me, equity is not something we can think in the end. I think it needs to be the part of the process from the very beginning. And that means that we should ask who is making the decisions, who is not in the room, and what kind of risk we are missing because we see the things only from one perspective. So I think the goal is to make sure AI works fairly for everyone, not just for few people.
100%. I agree. We've been seeing quite a trend where there's a gap in who is using AI, whether that's a gender gap, an age gap, a race gap. I think that people are so afraid of AI that they won't put in the work to make it better so that they're not scared. It's like eating an elephant. Have you heard that? Have you heard that saying? It's like you can't just eat the whole thing in one go. You have to bite off bit by bit. And I agree, like this is what you need to do with ethics. You have to have the idea, but you have to be taking it off bit by bit, especially with ethics of AI.
Yeah, and I think fear is one thing. I also, something that we've come across is people think they're cheating. They think that AI will give them unfair advantage as well, and sometimes don't adopt. And then it's also not just adopting it and trying it, but also not being involved in the data set. So not enough information about them being inputted so that bias can be avoided. I'm curious, we know you're in Finland. What is the climate like there around AI? Do you feel that Finland's at the forefront? Do you think you're behind? Do you think you're, keeping up with everyone else? What is the mood and attitude there, do you think, around AI?
Yeah, the attitude is everywhere is saying that we are behind.
Okay.
Like, I feel like everybody wants to win this AI race, that's for sure. It's a lot of discuss about this in Finland, how we can support innovation and how we can make sure that we have people who understand how to use AI for their advantage. So I feel like we are in a sort of good situation that people are using AI tools and testing, we are adopting, is not that fear anymore. I feel like there was a lot of fear before. Now it's more that people start to ask questions and raise concerns. Is this ethical and so on? And also climate change and how much energy these systems are using and so on. So I feel like we are on that point of the conversation right now, that many people are also a little bit full of AI because we have every day new AI tools coming into, our daily lives. So I feel like people are optimistic, but at the same time, this space is moving all the time.
Yeah, it's moving at such a pace, isn't it? That I don't know if anyone can really feel at the forefront of it. And I think that's really hard for everyone to feel like, oh yeah, we know we've got a handle on it, because as you said, new things are coming all the time. So although you said there might be a feeling that you're behind in trying to catch up, it's probably the sense of everyone. I mean, some And I think maybe some countries are much further behind than where you are, because at least you're forward thinking. They've got organizations like you in place who are really trying to be at the forefront of what is happening. I guess when we think about responsible innovation, which I think is something that you're really keen to explore, I don't know if you've come across any interventions or anything that's been really effective in building a sort of longer term capacity for responsible innovation, or even if you haven't come across anything, some ideas that you have that you think will help.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to AI ethics, I feel like people still think that it's a common sense. But when we are working with AI, we often face these complex trade-offs, like, for example, speed versus fairness or profit versus privacy and so on. So I feel like most of the teams don't have a clear process of making those decisions, and they often feel stuck or they completely avoid them. And secondly, I think many people don't understand actually how AI works, especially like non-technical people. And that often means that they don't know what questions to ask, where the risk might be. And also, for example, they might not realize how, for example, training data can affect outcomes.
Definitely. I think that there is such a knowledge gap as well. And I think it seems really inaccessible to understand these things, especially I think for maybe older people.
Yeah, I agree. I think that education is a piece, but I actually really like those dichotomies you shared. They are big things that we as a society need to decide on what's important, don't we? Yeah. Is profit more important? Is speed more important? How important is our privacy? How important is justice? There's such big questions that I think we haven't as a society agreed on. And if we haven't agreed on as a society, how can we agree on it around AI? And who does get to agree this? Yeah, I'm a bit afraid of this being in the hands of the most important, the people who are making decisions currently. I'm not sure they're the people I want to make those decisions around, because I think they'll always decide on profit and speed at the sacrifice of my privacy and justice, which I think is really important. So I'm trying to understand how we're going to come to decisions around ethics when these are such big topics. I don't know. How can we do that?
I know that globally, the only people who haven't signed it, the UK and the US, the UN actually proposed a standard of ethics for AI. That does protect our privacy, but sadly within the UK, we're not covered by it. I think in Finland, you might be a bit more covered than us. Even still, I think the fact that the UN have jumped on it now, I think that's quite positive. I also think it's probably 10 years or something until governments actually start getting ahead of it, or coming at the same time, because every 4 months there's a new generation of AI. It just moves so quickly. How can they protect our privacy when there's so much? I think that's another thing to think about as well.
Yeah, I hear your points, but I feel like it's like a fundamental underpinning
Yeah.
beneath the decisions that we make. And I guess that's what your foundation is working towards. But I just wonder how you think we agree. I don't know. It's too big a question for you.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I wish I would have a like a profound answer, but that is what we are aiming for. Who gets to decide this? What kind of conversation we like are shaping around AI and the future of AI? So these are important questions, and what we let happen, and what amount of privacy we give access, and so on. So these are the things that we really have to think carefully, because we see around other sides of the world, surveillance is like really, really normal thing. People don't even question that they've been supervised all the time. So this is also a good conversation to have, what kind of society we want to build around AI and what we let happen and so on.
Kind of tying into like the challenges of ethical AI and global relevance, we were just talking about how quickly AI is moving. How do you approach the challenge of creating ethical AI guidance, especially when everything is moving so quickly? How do you keep up to date with all the systems? And AI systems do often fail to account for some lived experiences and infrastructural realities. So how do you cope with it?
Yeah, it's tough because this space is moving incredibly fast and nobody cannot keep up. But I think we have to start this by listening what is really important for people. We have to understand that not one size fits all. We have different needs, but of course, like values like fairness and transparency should always stay same, and those are the guidelines we should always follow. But also understand that different organizations, they might need to apply them a little bit more based on their needs and systems and so on. So it's complex, and it's also really depends of the level of people's let's say, willingness to adopt AI, because some of the people are really against AI and some people are really optimistic and so on. So it's kind of mess with this space. But hopefully we will find a more common ground that we all agree that AI has a lot of potential, but also has risks. So how we can think these things critically, find some practical solutions and move forward with that.
Definitely. And I'm excited to see this in the future. I'm excited to see how it all unravels and how it all plays out. I think that before you talk about all the surveillance and all of our privacy, we are just seeing such a rise in global surveillance states, and AI definitely can feed into that as well. I don't think it's being helped by our global leaders. I don't think it's being helped by our local politicians either. I was actually speaking to someone who is part of an organization who are hosting an awards for people that create AI companies. And part of this awards, they have a big grant up for offer. And he was saying 90% of the people that are applying for like surveillance state style AI companies.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was shocked when he heard what I was doing. He was like there's so little good things that people are trying to create with AI. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that there's so little things. I think people are doing amazing things out there, but
That's what this podcast is about.
it is. I'm excited to see how with all the different changes we really can build a
As you were speaking, I was really thinking about cultural difference. And when we think about cultures around the world, some cultures are more rule focused and they will do what they're told, and others are a little bit more individualistic, and it's like it's all about me, and I'll bend the rules if I have to. So we've got all these cultures around the world, and I'm thinking that the AI might be more country focused or culture focused, because people will be looking at it differently. Even this idea that you mentioned about profit or justice, for example, some cultures, it's very capitalist and it's got to make the most money, and that's what success looks like. And others are much more collectivist, and it's about us and the world we create, and if someone's suffering, then we're all suffering. And I guess just thinking about that and AI, we think about the more global issues it can solve in a cultural setting. So if we just focus on Finland for a moment, we could be thinking about improving healthcare outcomes for people in Finland, or educational attainment for people in Finland. And I just curious as to maybe what you're finding when it comes to that balance of ambition and innovation with integrity and accountability, when we think of some of the big challenges we have around things like education, healthcare, poverty, for example, in your country, or trends you're seeing more globally.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think one of the things is that we also have to start to shape the conversation about, is profit really only metric that we should follow? Because companies are required to make profit by law, that's sure, but there's a limit how much we can, how much is, enough and so on. So what if we change this a bit and people's quality of life be improved, or happiness and so on? Because now we see a lot of people who are suffering and they have a lot of mental problems and so on. So what if we can use AI to solve these problems and do actually something good, and not just for profits and abuse the system in a sense? So I would like to see this more, that we would collectively think together and find solutions for this, because I don't think that ethics is opposite than innovation. I feel like ethics should be foundation of everything, and based on that you can build long-term trust and so on. So I feel like especially in Europe, this is something that is our core values. We have European values. We want to, have them, keep them, and so on. So I would like to see that we will shape this conversation more on human focused, what is benefiting the human, the planet, and so on, not just like few big corporations.
I completely agree with you. There's so much greed in the world. And I agree. I don't think profit is the only margin we should be basing things on. We should be basing it on happiness, on joy, on love, on equality. And I know, I feel like everyone says things like
Not everyone.
well, yeah, not everyone, not big companies, but I do think there is such a push, especially with AI. And it's like, how can we use this to get more work done, to to boost profits, but it's how can we use it to help humans? My mum was saying before, people have been saying that they think it's like a cheap or a lazy way out, but I think it actually is just giving us more time to do things that can benefit the world in other ways as well.
Or helping us to do things faster, so that we can progress things more quickly as well, progress good things more quickly.
Mm.
I think it can. But I guess I really like that idea of the European values, and us being really clear, and the point you were making about the UN as well, us really considering these are our values. How does AI fit into that? Not letting AI run away with itself and then us having to pull back when potentially it's too late. But we do have people running countries, not trying to get too political, as businesses, and not necessarily as businesses that are aimed at good. So there are things to consider there. I guess, this idea of human-centered, human-focused, for me, that's what it's all about. How do we humanize AI implementation? How do we put human at the center? I just wonder if you can unpack that for us a little bit. Like, what does it really mean for an individual working in an organization, or a leader leading an organization, or someone who hasn't even engaged with AI as yet? What does it mean to put humans at the center? Because I know that's really important to you in the work that you do.
Yeah, it's really important. And I don't want to even live in the world where AI is running everything. I think everything starts with the questions like what we are actually aiming for. It all depends. What are your goals? You are trying to reduce costs, save time, so on. But I feel like it's really important to really think what we are actually aiming for, because nowadays it's such a trendy thing to take any AI tool just because it's AI. I feel like we have to be more clear what we're actually aiming for. And sometimes humans can do the thing better than AI in certain cases. And especially like cases where you have to double check things. You have to not taking AI just because it's AI. And also humans always have to stay in the final decision. That is really, really important to keep in mind. And also what kind of work cultures we are creating. Do we really want that we are just supervising AI? That is our daily lives. Or like what kind of, this is also important to questions like how we shape these things, because what is the point that we are saving time, but what we actually doing with it and so on. So these are questions as we have to start to think as humans, what we are aiming for, what we are trying, and so on. So I feel like everyone should use AI for their advantage. That's for sure. It's the future. But also I see a lot that it's been overused, and I'm also really afraid what it might do to our critical thinking in a long term, especially for kids. Nowadays, if they just use, let's say, ChatGPT and they take the first answer and they don't question anymore and so on. So that is also a thing that we have to consider, what kind of society we are creating with these AI tools.
And I've got one more curious question. So as you know, we're intergenerational. We've got someone in their 20s and someone much older. I'm not going to say how old I am. Are you finding an intergenerational mix of people interested in what you're doing, or are you finding a particular generation interested?
Yeah, it's hard to say because I'm speaking with people globally and with different ages and different backgrounds. So it's hard to like generalize things. I see that still is really like divided. Some people are really afraid of it and some people are really over optimistic. So I would like to see the Swift going more in the middle, how we can use it responsibly, but also understand the potential. But yeah, definitely there's a huge interest, but also people start to get really a little bit tired of ChatGPT and other tools.
Yeah. The initial euphoria wears off a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's been great speaking to you.
It has.
Coming to the end, unfortunately, aren't we?
Yeah, I've got one quick fire question. Don't think about it, just answer as you would like. What is one AI myth you'd love to bust?
For sure, it has to be that ethics is breaks to the innovation and so on, because I often hear that ethics is a boring thing and how it's related to it's just gonna cause more trouble and so on. But I think it's actually the opposite. I feel like ethics should be the foundation of everything, because once you start to build the trust, you will have more like a long-term success and so on. So if we think about that, anybody can launch AI tool really quickly, but without trust, people won't adapt it, or worst, it can actually like harm or damage your reputation. So yeah, I think that is like one of the things, like real trust comes being transparent, testing carefully, and really making sure that people understand what AI is doing and why.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure to speak with you.
Mhm.
Really love the work you're doing, and we'll make sure everyone everywhere finds out about it. But thank you so much for your time and your insight and the amazing work you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to AI for Equity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Stay curious, stay bold, and keep using AI to build a fairer future.